So 20 bodyweight squats a day might sound too small to make any real difference, and I get why. It's just 20 reps. How much could that possibly change? But there's a reason this one simple movement keeps showing up in the research as one of the best signals we have for how long and how well you're gonna live. And the best part is how little it asks of you, which is almost nothing. It doesn't cost anything, and you don't have to go to the gym or buy expensive equipment. And you can do it in your kitchen or in your bedroom or in the corner of your office, wherever you just happen to be standing. And it only takes just 2 minutes max out of your entire day. Yet what those 2 minutes set off inside your body reaches a lot further than your legs. It will affect your blood sugar and your heart health, your bones and your balance, and even your brain. So in this video, I want to walk you through the 9 specific changes that you'll see when you do this every day. Some of these effects will kick in almost immediately within minutes of finishing your squats, and others will build slowly in the background over weeks and months and even years, until one day you realize that you've held on to something that most people your age have already lost. And at the end of the video, I'll show you a simple test that you can do on your own floor right now. And it's a test that researchers have actually linked to how long you'll live. And we'll go over what scoring looks like and what a good score looks like for your age. And if you're new to this channel, I'm Dr. Leonid Kim. And my mission is to give you the science and the practical tools to not only live longer, but to feel better. And as always, even though I'm a physician, I'm not your physician. So please talk to your doctor before making any changes to your health regimen, as all the information in this video is educational only and not medical advice. Okay, the first change you'll see when you start doing bodyweight squats is in the biggest muscles that you own. Your legs and your glutes make up the largest chunk of muscle in your entire body, and they were built to be used hard. Our bodies have evolved to use these muscles all day and every day. And for almost all of human history, the squat wasn't just a workout. It was a resting position. There were no chairs. So when people wanted to stop and rest, they just sank down into a deep squat and stayed there. And people squatted to cook and to eat and to dig and to get down to pick up a child. It's a position much of the world can still drop to for many minutes, but with our modern environment, those big muscles are now severely underused. So when you squat, you're not really starting something new, you're actually switching back on something that your body has been wanting to do. Every rep loads your quads and the glutes, and that load puts tension on the muscle fibers. And that tension flips a switch inside your cell called mTOR. And the simplest way to think about mTOR is it acts like a master switch for building muscle. If you flip it on, the muscle starts laying down fresh protein to rebuild itself a little stronger than before. And here's why that's worth 2 minutes of your day. Starting in your 30s, you can lose somewhere around 3 to 5% of your muscle every decade, and it can even speed up after 60. That slow drain is called sarcopenia, and that can turn into the difference between people who can still rise out of a low chair at 80 and the people who can't. And there are studies like this one that show that having low muscle mass at 65 more than doubles the risk of breaking a bone in a fall. So each set of 20 squats is a tiny deposit in the account that basically decides whether you stay strong enough to live on your own terms, or if you can get off the floor under your own power, which, as you'll see at the end, turns out to be one of the most predictive tests on how well you're gonna age. Now, the second change happens in your brain, and this one you can actually feel the same day you start. When you work out a muscle, even for a minute or two, it releases chemical messengers into the bloodstream, and your brain picks those up and responds by releasing its own messengers. So you get a rise in endorphins and other mood lifters, and alongside them you get something called BDNF, or brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And BDNF is the primary driver of neuroplasticity, or basically your brain's ability to adapt and rewire itself. It's also responsible for keeping your neurons healthy and helps them build new connections, and they help your brain resist the slow decline that comes with age. So that's why people who just keep moving across their lives have lower rates of dementia and depression, and they just stay sharper into an old age. So even just a couple of minutes of squats to break up a long stretch of sitting can pay off huge dividends in the one organ that you really want to protect as you get older. And the third change can affect your heart. And squats can be a genuine workout for your heart, which may sound strange because we don't usually think of squats as cardio, but watch what happens when we do squats. When you drive your whole body weight up off the ground, those huge muscles in your legs, they have to contract pretty hard. And the moment they do, they demand a sudden surge of blood and oxygen. And your heart feels that and it answers it. It beats faster and it pumps with more force. And if you string 20 of these squats together, well, you've given your heart a short but a very demanding workout. And over weeks and months, it adapts by getting more efficient and moving more blood with every beat. But there's a second thing that's going on that's easy to miss. Your leg muscles are sometimes called your second heart because every time they squeeze, they press on the veins running through them, and they help push blood back up towards your heart against gravity. But when you sit at a desk all day, all that blood tends to pull in your lower legs. So even a small set of squats can turn on your second heart. And that's part of why just moving your legs can leave you less heavy and more awake. A lot of what keeps the muscles around your heart strong actually starts in your legs. Now the fourth change shows up in your blood sugar, and this is another one that you can actually feel. So think about that heavy or foggy feeling after a big meal, or that afternoon energy crash, or those cravings for snacks or sweets that come on just a couple of hours after you eat. A lot of that is your blood sugar spiking and then dropping, and your legs are actually one of the best tools that you have for smoothing it out. And here's why. Your muscle is the single largest place in your body to store and burn glucose, all that sugar floating around your blood. Now normally to get that glucose out of your blood and into cells, your body needs insulin. And insulin is just a hormone that works like a key. When it shows up, it brings little doors called glute 4 transporters up to the surface of the cell, and those doors let sugar in. Now, when a muscle contracts, it brings those exact same doors up on the surface of the cells, and they do that without needing insulin. So every single squat is pulling sugar straight out of your bloodstream through a side door that doesn't require insulin to open it. And this is when you can actually work the timing of when you do your squats. You can work it to your advantage. If you do your 20 squats shortly after a meal, you're putting your biggest muscles to work right when the sugar is flooding in, and you blunt that glucose spike before it builds. Now the fifth change is in your bones, and this one you can't feel happening, but it might matter more than almost anything else as you get older. Most people picture bone as this dead and fixed scaffolding, but it's not. Bone is made up of living tissue. It's constantly being broken down and rebuilt, and your body decides how much to invest in it based on the demands you put on it. So when you squat, the muscles pull hard on the bones of your hips and your thighs and your spine, and that force signals the cells that build bone, these special cells called osteoblasts, to keep the skeleton dense and strong. But if you take the signal away, your bone slowly thins out instead, and that can eventually lead to osteoporosis. This is exactly why a minor fall in your 70s, something that normally wouldn't even faze you, can lead to a shattered hip. And there was actually a trial called LIFMOR. It was a small, but it was a randomized control trial where they took postmenopausal women who already had osteoporosis, and they put them through heavy loaded squats and deadlifts. And the result was real gains in bone density in the spine and the hip with no serious injuries. I think out of 100 participants, they had one person who reported minor lower back spasms. But, and this is important, all those participants were closely supervised by exercise professionals. And this goes to show that even fragile bones can build themselves back up, even in the higher risk populations like postmenopausal women. Another important caveat is this study used heavy weights and not body weight. So think of your 20 daily squats as the starting signal. And as you get stronger, adding a bit of load over time is where you discover the bigger bone gains. Okay, the next 3 changes are all about something that you can see from the outside, how strong and steady and mobile you stay on your own 2 feet as you get older. And a very important aspect of all of that is balance. And I don't bring this up to scare you, but the numbers are worth knowing. Falls are the leading cause of injury-related death in adults over 65. And about 1 in 4 adults falls every single year. And the thing that decides whether a stumble turns into a fall or a fall becomes a fracture is whether your body can react fast enough to catch you. And the good news is that's a trainable skill. Lowering yourself down under control when you do a squat trains the exact same muscles that you need to catch yourself mid-stumble. Squats can also sharpen your sense of where your body is in space, and it strengthens all the small stabilizing muscles around your hips and your knees and your ankles that keep you steady. So as we age, the stronger and more coordinated those legs are, the more margin that we have when we trip or lose balance. And if we do fall and go down, getting back up the floor actually involves doing a squat. So you're training your way out at the same time. All right, the seventh change catches a lot of people off guard because it goes against something that you've probably heard your whole life. Squats are actually good for your knees if done properly. And historically, so many people have been taught the opposite. But for most people, squats is a really good way to actually strengthen your knees. And here's why. The cartilage inside your knee, the smooth cushion on the ends of the bones, it doesn't have its own blood supply. So when you bend and load the joint, you pump fluid in and out of the cartilage, bringing nutrients in and taking waste out. And people say motion is lotion, and that's as close to the truth in this case. A joint that moves and gets loaded with weights tends to stay healthier than one that sits all day and doesn't move. And in addition to all of that, squatting strengthens all the muscles around the knee, and stronger muscles around the knee mean a more stable and better supported joint, which helps protect it against wear and tear. Now, one thing to emphasize is this means a squat in a range that feels good for you. You do not have to drop all the way down to the floor, and you should never push yourself through pain. In fact, if you have any joint issues or pains, or if you've never done a squat before, I highly recommend you working with a good physical therapist just to make sure that you get your form right and you go through all the progressive training to safely increase the range of motion and the volume of repetitions. And the eighth change that you see is your mobility, that simple ability to move your own body through its full range. Because here's what sitting for multiple hours a day does to your body. When your hips and ankles stay folded into a chair for hours, the tissues around them slowly tighten and your usable range actually shrinks. So eventually you stop being able to get low to the ground because of that limited mobility. So a daily set of squats works against the specific adaptation that plagues us today in our modern world. And this isn't about flexibility for its own sake. This is about whether at 75 you can get down on the floor to play with a grandchild and stand back up without any help. Or whether if you do fall, you can get yourself back up with minimal injury. Now the ninth change, and the final for this video, is the one that's happening deepest of all because it reaches your entire body all at once. Your muscle isn't only there to move you, it's actually one of the largest hormone producing organs in your body. When your muscles contract, they release chemical messengers called myokines. And some of these myokines travel through your bloodstream and they help reduce this low-grade simmering inflammation that builds up in your body as we age. And just to clarify, this is not the inflammation that you get after infection or a twisted ankle. That's acute inflammation. We're talking about the chronic and low-grade inflammation that sits underneath heart disease and diabetes and even dementia. So the more muscle you carry and the more often you actually use it, the more of these calming signals you send out to quiet that inflammation. So let's talk about the test that I mentioned earlier in this video that can predict your lifespan and longevity. It's called the sitting rising test, or SRT, and it comes from the work of a Brazilian physician named Claudio Araujo. I hope I'm saying it correctly. And it's a very simple test. From standing, you lower yourself all the way down to sitting on the floor, and then you stand back up using as little support as you can. And you start with 10 points, 5 for going down, and then 5 for coming back up. And every time you use a hand or a forearm or knee or the side of your leg to help you, you take off a point. And if you wobble or lose balance, you take off half a point. So the cleaner you can get down and back up with no hands and no knees, the higher you score, all the way up to a perfect 10. And in the study, they looked at over 4,000 people, ages between mid-40s to mid-70s, and they followed them for over 12 years. People who scored a perfect 10 had a mortality or death rate of about 4% during follow-up. And for those who scored 4 or below, the mortality was over 40%. Now, this was an observational study, so this was all a correlation. So a low score doesn't doom anyone. And a high score is not a free pass, but think about how much that one movement captures. Your strength and your balance, your mobility, the power in your legs, all the things that your 20 squats a day are building back up. So if you can score a perfect 10 today, that's simply your starting line. And your daily squats are how you improve that score. Because almost none of what we talked about in this video comes from one big heroic workout. It comes from showing up for just 2 short minutes, but every single day, until your body has no choice but to adapt. And once again, if you've never done body squats before, or if you have any joint or back issues, I would strongly recommend you seeing a physical therapist first to guide you on the proper form and to help you get on a good routine of progressively increasing flexion and volume. One of the main goals here is to get stronger without an injury. I hope this was helpful. Stay healthy, and I'll see you in the next one.